The average blood levels of homocysteine in men is about 1.5 points higher than in women. Maybe that's one of the reasons why men tend to be at higher risk for cardiovascular disease. Women don't need to make as much creatine as men since they tend to have less muscle mass, and that may help explain the
Well, how about vegans like you? Do they also have less muscle mass?
Men tend to be at higher risk for cardiovascular disease. Women don't need to make as much creatine as men since they tend to have less muscle mass, and that may help explain the gender gap in homocysteine levels. If you remember from my last video, in the process of making creatine, your body produces homocysteine as a byproduct. So maybe for people with stubbornly high homocysteine levels that don't sufficiently respond to B vitamins, perhaps creatine supplementation may represent a practical strategy to draw homocysteine levels down into the normal range. It seemed to work in rats, but in humans it worked in one study, this one, but didn't seem to work in another study, this one, or this one. And in this study, homocysteine levels were even driven up. So this whole suggestion that taking creatine supplements would lower homocysteine was called into question. But all those studies were done in non-vegetarians. So they were effectively already supplementing with creatine every day in the form of muscle meat. So they were
No. That's not supplementing. Just because they're not vegetarian doesn't mean they're eating beef every day, dude. Red meat has significant amounts of creatine in it. You can get like 5 grams of creatine by eating a significant amount of meat, but just because you're not vegetarian doesn't mean you're eating significant amounts of meat. Most non-vegetarian and non-vegan standard American dieters eat very little good quality meat. They don't eat a bunch of red meat. They're eating KFC. They're eating a few ounces maximum of animal foods per day. They're eating a mostly plant-based diet. The American diet, the standard American diet, is about 70 to 80% calorically plant food.
Supplements would lower homocysteine was called into question. But all those studies were done in non-vegetarians. So they were effectively already supplementing with creatine every day in the form of muscle meat. So they were basically
Supplementing. So eating meat is supplementing. You're basically supplementing all the nutrients you need. Zinc, vitamin A, your iron, heme iron, zinc, iodine. You're just supplementing that by eating animal foods. It's the same as taking a supplement. This linguistic twist, this linguistic manipulation that these people use is very obvious to anybody with half a brain.
just testing higher versus lower supplementation. Those eating strictly plant-based make all their creatine from scratch, so they be more sensitive to an added creatine source. But there were never any studies on creatine supplementation in vegans for homocysteine lowering until now. They took a bunch of vegans who were not supplementing their diets with vitamin B12. So, some of their homocysteine levels were like through the roof.
All right, so let's read this quote. We included individuals who were vegan for more than 1 year who did not supplement their diets with vitamin B12. So does that mean that they were all not supplementing, or they included some people who were not supplementing? He's not very clear about that. Of course, this dude is always misrepresenting the research that he claims to have read.
Through the roof, a few as high as 50 when the ideal is more like under 10. But after taking some creatine for a few weeks, all of their homocysteine levels normalized.
Whoa, after just taking creatine. Why don't you just eat meat? Why don't you just eat meat, dude? You look fucking anemic. Look how thick your glasses have to be. Look how much myopia you've got. You can't even see. You can see, look at the thickness of that glass. He's got like a 1/2-inch thick piece of glass in front of his eyes so his beady little vegan peckers can see. But he's going to say, oh, you just supplement with some creatine. What about the zinc? What about the bioavailable
I'm not having any difficulty. Again, I'm bigger than you. I'm stronger than you.
There we go. That's what I like. I like when we get those interruptions.
If you want to be the big man, the big daddy.
Do you want to be the big man, the big daddy?
But I was not.
Dream. Gladius Celestia donates €2 via Super Chat. Says, creatine, meat in Greek, LOL, literally, exactly. That's where you get creatine. You get it from meat, Dr. Greger. You get it from the meat. You're getting creatine, you're getting zinc, you're getting heme iron. You're getting all the nutrients that you don't get on a vegan diet. And oh, what do you know? It cures the vegan symptoms that you're getting. The symptoms of brain fog, the symptoms of central nervous system deterioration, the symptoms of stroke. Because let's admit it, these long-term vegans act like they're always having a fucking stroke. Gladius Celestia, thanks for the €2 super chat. Del Bridge, there you go, Del Bridge, one of the favorite super chatters around. Del Bridge donates $5 through super chat. Says, I read that 2 pounds of red muscle meat equates to about 5 grams of creatine. So yes, 5 grams of creatine. Now that might be right, about 2 pounds of muscle meat, 5 grams of creatine. So very few people, even if you're doing like a meat-based diet, very few people are going to eat 2 pounds of muscle meat a day. The cost is prohibitive. It's very difficult to get good quality meat for a lot of people. A lot of people are afraid of meat, but you're going to get plenty of creatine from just eating meat. Supplementing creatine is not necessary if you're eating sufficient amounts of good quality animal foods, if you're eating good quality red meat. So yeah, Dr. Greger's here saying you're at more risk of a stroke, but if you just take some creatine, right? If you just supplement this and supplement that, why don't you just eat meat every day? Why don't you just eat a steak every day? You don't have to worry about any of this shit. You don't have to worry about looking like you, Dr. Greger. You don't have to worry about acting like you, Dr. Greger. You don't have to worry about frying your central nervous system like a lot of these people who follow your advice do. You don't have to worry about a lot of the issues of nutrient deficiencies for yourself and your children if you just eat animal foods. What'd you say?
How do they make vegan creatine?
How do they make vegan creatine? Exactly. That creatine, is that vegan? Most definitely not. I guarantee you 90% plus of the creatine is not vegan. I'm not going to spend the time to research that live right now, but that's something to look into. Where does that creatine come from? Is that plant-based? Is it plant-based?
But after taking some creatine for a few weeks, all of their homocysteine levels normalized before and after. Right? Now, they didn't really normalize.
After taking creatine, a compound that's available exclusively in animal foods,
which would have been under 10, but that's presumably because they weren't taking any B12, right?
and remember, creatine is also used as a nootropic. It improves brain function and central nervous system function. It doesn't just increase your muscle mass, right, through allowing you to hold a little bit more water, a little bit more water weight, a little bit more glycogen in the muscles, a little more fluids, volumizing the muscles. That's what creatine does. There are also cognitive benefits. We require these things. Let's hear how he dances around this.
Vegetarians and vegans, vitamin B12 supplements, either daily dosing or once a week.
If I just say this with a smug, smarmy voice, then I believe that you're stupid enough to listen to me because I say, I'm a doctor.
And their levels really normalize in a matter of months.
Really?
But the fact that even without B12, that you could bring down homocysteine levels with creatine alone suggests, to me at least, that if your homocysteine is elevated on a plant-based diet, meaning above 10, despite taking B12 supplements and eating greens and beans to get enough folate, well, then it may be worth experimenting with supplementing with a gram of creatine for a few weeks and see if your homocysteine...
Hey, is that creatine vegan? How about you just eat meat? How about you just eat freaking meat? Imagine, there's so many. Imagine how many mothers are watching this. There are mothers who are starving their children, destroying their central nervous system, destroying their ability to have a legitimately healthy life as a human being by listening to this demon freaking Dr. Greger here. Look how thick this dude's glasses are. I cannot see. His vision is getting worse and worse. His neck and his head are perfect and beautiful and perfectly acceptable. If you just supplement right, you can look just like him. Peak vegan performance. If you take the right supplements, take the right drugs, you can do a vegan diet, save the animals, and look like Dr. Greger.
levels come down. Why 1 gram? That's approximately how much non-vegetarians are not having to make themselves. That's how much erased vegetarian discrepancies in blood and muscle, and how much has been shown to be safe in the longer term. How safe exactly is it? Well, one can take a bit of comfort in the fact that it's one of the world's best-selling dietary supplements.
No. How about you just eat meat? Eat meat. Where's the creatine come from? Is it vegan? Probably not.
Literally billions of servings taken, and the only consistently reported side effect has been weight gain, presumed to be from water retention. The only serious side effects appear to be among those with pre-existing kidney diseases, taking whopping doses like 20 grams a day. A concern was raised that creatine could potentially form a carcinogen known as N-nitrososarcosine when it hit the acid bath of the stomach, but when actually put to the test, this does not appear to be a problem. Bottom line, doses up to 3 grams a day are unlikely to pose any risk, provided high purity creatine is used. And as we all know, dietary supplements are not regulated by the FDA, may contain contaminants or not actually contain what's on the label.
Oh, you mean like all your vegan supplements that you say people need to take to stay alive? Oh, you mean there's no regulation on these vegan supplements that you need to stay alive, that you got to take in order to not die? You're admitting that? You're admitting that? That we can't trust what's on the labels of these supplements, that they're going to be contaminated very often with heavy metals, with all sorts of nonsense, that when they're extracting some of these compounds, they're using things like hexane. Yeah. So Dr. Greger is laying it down here. So all your cyanocobalamin supplements that require slave labor to mine, those are also possibly contaminated.
Was raised that creatine could potentially form a carcinogen known as N-nitrososarcosine when it hit the acid bath of the stomach, but when actually put to the test, this does not appear to be a problem. Bottom line, doses up to 3 grams a day are unlikely to pose any risk, provided high purity creatine is used. And as we all know, dietary supplements are not regulated by the FDA, may contain contaminants or not actually contain what's on the label. Contaminants generated during the industrial production. When researchers looked at 33 samples of creatine supplements made in the US and Europe, they all did actually contain creatine, which is nice, but about half exceeded the maximum level recommended by food safety authorities for at least one contaminant. The researchers recommend that consumers give their preference to products obtained by producers that ensure the highest quality control. Easier said than done. Because of the potential risks, I don't think people should be taking creatine supplements willy-nilly, but the potential benefits may exceed the potential risks if, again, you're on a healthy plant-based diet, taking B12, and your homocysteine levels are still not under 10. I would suggest giving 1 gram a day of creatine a try to see if it brings it down. The reason I did this whole video series all goes back to this study, which found that although the overall cardiovascular disease risk is lower in vegetarians and vegans combined, they appeared to be at slightly higher stroke risk. I went through a list of potential causes, arrived at elevated homocysteine, and the solution, a regular, reliable source of vitamin B12.
See, all this reductionist attitude towards food. How about you just eat meat? If you just eat meat, you bypass all of these potential downfalls of a vegan diet. Just eat meat. What's the problem?
The cheapest, easiest method that I personally use is one 2,500 microgram chewable tablet of cyanocobalamin. In fact, you can just use 2,000 microgram once a week, and cyanocobalamin is
But these people very often still show symptoms of deficiency, even when supplementing this.
Most stable source of B12. Take that once a week. And then, as I detailed in this video, a backup plan for those doing that and still having elevated homocysteine is an empirical trial of 1 gram a day of creatine supplementation, which has been shown to improve at least capillary blood flow in those who started out with high homocysteine levels. The bottom line is that plant-based diets appear to markedly reduce our risk of multiple leading killer diseases, heart
No. Vegan diets tend to decrease cholesterol, which has been falsely vilified as the root cause of heart disease, which is not true. And they will not let that one go. Look at those eyes. Wow. Look like a little demonic shark, Dr. Greger here.
Type 2 diabetes and many common types of cancer, but an increased risk of stroke may represent an Achilles heel. Nonetheless, they have the potential to achieve a truly exceptional health span if they face this problem forthrightly by restricting salt intake.
Don't eat salt. Don't eat salt. So you're going to have lower blood volume, higher blood pressure from not eating salt. Salt is crucial. We need sodium. We need electrolytes. Don't eat salt. Further decrease the volume of your blood and make yourself more skinny and emaciated. Great idea, Dr. Greger.
Measures that promote brain artery health. Nonetheless, these considerations do not justify nutritional nihilism. On balance, even strictly plant-based diets offer such versatile protection to long-term health that they remain highly recommendable. Most likely, the optimum strategy is to eat plant-based, along with going out of the way to eat particularly protective foods, as I talked about before, regular aerobic exercise, and most importantly, taking your vitamin B12. Oh, and
hey, how about just eating animal foods? And you bypass all that shit. How about you just eat animal foods? You don't have to take any supplements that could be possibly contaminated, which you admit in this video. You admit here that there's heavy contamination of these supplements, yet you tell people to rely on supplements and trust them.
Try not to huff whipped cream charging canister gas.
What a joke. So, high homocysteine, you could just because you're doing too many whippets. You did too many whippets, and that's why you got high homocysteine. Oh, it's not such a big deal. If you do whippets, you get the high homocysteine. Ooh, I'm an expert. Oh, let's just conflate doing whippets with, yeah. Oh, if you just suck on that bottle of Cool Whip, you suck that up, you're going to make a low homocysteine, huh? What a joke. What a joke. So, don't worry about it. If you do a bunch of whippets, you're going to get high homocysteine too. So, it just doesn't even matter. There's some hardcore science from Dr. Greger.
Homocysteine, and the solution, a regular, reliable source of vitamin B12.
Like animal foods.
The cheapest.
Like animal foods. The best way to get that is from quality animal foods. So there we go. Dr. Greger admitting that animal foods are necessary for health.